So Michail, we're going to link you on, and if you are ready to, hi, okay, thank you,
Hello.
and nice to see you. Good morning. Okay, and you are in Helsinki, despite the name, or because of the name, you are in Helsinki, yeah. Where you've been for how many years?
Almost 20.
Almost 20. Okay. Can you remember what Athens was like then?
Well, I grew up in a small town on Crete in Hania.
Ah, okay. All right.
So not much experience from Athens.
Okay, all right. But thank you for coming to share your research, and maybe we just you take over from here, and we can hear you and see you. You just need to share the screen, I suppose, and we'll be off. Thanks.
Yeah. So, very briefly, I'll say a few things. I indeed live in Finland for almost 20 years. I came to do my doctorate at the University of Art and Design Helsinki, which is now part of Aalto University. And it was in the spatial design department. My dissertation is accessible online. It was about the ways the design and management of public space contributes to the discrimination of certain groups of users, such as immigrants. And I had two case studies in Omonia Square in Athens and in Helsinki railway station. Then I did my postdoc for the Helsinki University about intercultural public spaces, and there I looked into Toronto in Canada. I think Trevor wanted me to talk about intercultural public space, but I've been talking about it quite a lot in the classroom. So I thought maybe I would challenge myself and talk about something that I find very interesting, which I haven't done research, and I had to actually do a little bit of preliminary desk research for this presentation. And I won't tell you what it is exactly now. I'll just start by saying that I called this public space in the country of Nokia connecting people, because before moving to Finland, I'm in the generation of the Nokia mobile services. So I knew that from Finland, basically, that this is the country of Nokia connecting people. I'll give very few kind of approximate numbers comparing Finland to Greece, just to get an idea of how large and sparsely populated Finland is compared to Greece. In 1 square kilometer there you will find 18 people, and in Greece 82. Of course, that number takes into consideration also the urban centers like Helsinki, where the density, of course, is much higher. For one inhabitant of Helsinki, has in her disposal almost 105 square meters of green space, and in Athens it's not even 1 square meter, which is, I think, quite shocking. And finally, that regarding houses, one person has roughly 39 square meters of home space, and in Greece is roughly 35. Okay. One of the things that I recognized when I came to Finland 20 years ago in Helsinki specifically and started research in public space, it was this right to roam that it's common in all Nordic countries. Maybe that's something that is not very known in the South, that nature is for everyone, and even if it's private land, everyone has the right to be there, to spend time there respectively and taking care of the environment, not being too intrusive, because Finns are notoriously discreet people and quite reticent. At least that's partly the stereotype, but it's also partly true. So this right to move freely and roam around is something interesting, something you see also in the way planning has been applied, where often the borders between public and private property are vague. And that Nokia connecting people, that logo that was it's really iconic. For 20 years, I've been thinking about how this connecting actually is a very powerful word. Often I thought that it's also kind of an oxymoron in Finland, but on the other hand, of course, it is the country where the Nokia company started, long before actually the mobile phone company. So that connecting, that verb is very interesting in Finland, in the context where we understand that community is important. There is a very strong we mentality, while at the same time there is a very strong idea of individualism and the personhood. 20 years ago, Manuel Castells and Pekka Himonen wrote a paper that has been very widely cited about the Finnish information society, and they mention many interesting things. Among those, I chose these few about what makes Finland so special and the Finnish identity. They talk about welfare values, so that there's a baseline of provisions and services that everyone should get, education, healthcare, housing, so on and so forth. And there is, to couple it with technological advancement, there is a strong drive for innovation. Of course, Nokia is an example, but there are many more. They also mention as a characteristic social hackerism, an important grassroots strategy for insurgent, innovative forces to flourish. And that's something that I've seen growing in these 20 years quite a lot, especially the last 10, 15 years. And I'll explain more later. This is a public demonstration downtown Helsinki when already the anti-capitalist movement the rhetoric had been established. And of course, there were demonstrators also in Helsinki as a result. There have been quite some discussion the last few years on the fourth sector, and Mainpää, Feinle, and Schulman are few of the scholars, Finnish scholars, that they've been writing and actually advocating for it. And what Mainpää and Feinle wrote in 2017 was about the self-organized urban civic activism that has emerged and that they framed as a resource for the metropolis, for Helsinki, or for any metropolis for that matter. And they actually defined the fourth sector. So first is the public sector, the second is the private sector, third is the NGOs, and then the fourth, they refer to the area of civil society that with its quick, lightly organized, proactive, so not reactive, but proactive and activity-centered nature is structured outside of the third sector or the field of the non-governmental organizations. They also make a point to stress the importance of digitalization in all this process, how a lot of it takes place in the social media, which creates platforms for this kind of communication between like-minded people to emerge and flourish. Now, in relation to this urban civic activism, I'll be talking more about public space activism, which is defined by Canadian planner Andrew Pask as concentration of people who would otherwise not be connected to activism people who are feeling strongly about public space, what is happening in it, how it's managed and designed, and who has the right in it. And these are people who are engaged, for instance, in street reclamation. So this famous Reclaim the Street movement, guerrilla gardening, counter-surveillance, disability activism. I would add here LGBTQ activism, anti-billboard lobbying, and so on and so forth. And of course, progressive urban planning and design. This ties very well with my idea, actually the idea of Don Mitchell, with which I agree very much. He's a North American geographer who, in his very interesting book, The Right to the City, has kind of given a definition of public space that very much resonates to me, that it is the people who make a space public when they try to fulfill their pressing need of theirs, and through their actions make it public. So it's we fulfilling a pressing need of ours, who with our actions make a space really public. What Mitchell says, and with which I agree very much, and it ties very well with this movement of public space activism, it's also, it leaves an insinuation of possible risk, of possible exclusion. And that's something that I've recognized it when I read it. That's something I recognize every time I use this definition of public space, that when some group or another takes space, through their actions make it public, some other groups might be excluded. So there is an exclusion there that it's not always terrible. Actually, it is terrible when it's done purposefully. So that's why I think that the people who are doing this kind of activism, and they are proactive, they should also be self-reflective and be proactive as far as the possible exclusion goes from their actions. So despite that, I still stand by this, definition. Now, what public space activism has created in Helsinki? Well, in the last 15 years, I've seen a lot of projects taking place, public space activism. So people who might now be called people belonging in the fourth sector, opposing or reacting to the over-regulation that is evident in Finland. They take space and they try to, and they express themselves, and they do what they want to do. Some of those projects have been very successful, very popular, and I'll present a few of them, but very, very briefly. One is the Restaurant Day that started exactly as a reaction to it was a kind of revolt against the regulations of the city of Helsinki regarding food hygiene and health issues, cooking and consuming food in the public space. So this started as an activist movement or as an activism, and it has become an institution. So it happens a few times a year, normally when the weather is okay in Helsinki, where everyone can cook or offer or sell their food. Even restaurants do it, but anyone really can do that. And the center of the city, but also neighborhoods in the suburbs, you find these kind of small tables and children or adults selling whatever, cupcakes or very elaborate food. Okay, another one is the dinner under the sky. Now, imagine this is not a very easy thing to do, to allow people to actually have elaborate dinners under the sky in parks in the city. And I'm not talking about just eating together with a proper dining set. I'm talking about having gas heaters for your food, consuming alcohol, and having, you know, really a kind of cozy feeling, kind of a private bubble in the public space. It requires a lot of negotiation with the authorities, and the people behind these events actually have to do that. They have been doing it, so that, you know, the whole event is organized and it spreads all over the city in the parks. The picture below on the bottom of the slide is from, actually, they were celebrating a birthday party, and it was a big event, as you can see, a very, I mean, a proper banquet. So that was dinner under the sky. Then, of course, the previous were much related with the food. This is more about art, and it's basically a guy who started this project, and it has also become kind of a very famous and popular, and in a way, it's an institution nowadays. I've lived in this neighborhood in Pasila. It's a concrete neighborhood. It's a famous neighborhood, on the other hand, because it's elevated on a platform where parking and car circulation is all put under, and on the ground you have only, or basically, pedestrian streets and buildings, of course, and small parks. And in that gray and concrete neighborhood, this guy has started this project bringing art, murals. This is one of the most, I would say, modest ones, because very next to my previous house, there was a mural of many, many square meters on the side of the building as a result of this Helsinki urban art. There is the cleaning day, where people can just go out of their houses in their streets with all their surplus properties. You know, basically what is one's junk might be someone else's treasure. So this idea of sharing economy and bargain hunting. So there is not so much exchanging goods, it's more really buying and selling. And a lot of that also happens on, as we said, with the digitalization. It happens on social media, social platforms. So you have all these groups in neighborhoods that they exchange information about, you know, things they want to get rid of, or actually, you know, if one needs help with something. And again, it's not so much about exchanging of goods, more about selling and buying. So what we saw is how what Michail and Finlay are calling fourth sector, being very active also in public space activism, which is a very positive thing, because exactly people make space public with their actions to fulfill certain needs. Fair enough. However, there are issues, and some researchers have already pointed out those issues. Some of those researchers are also advocates of the fourth sector, but they also are wary of certain things. And one is something that I already mentioned, the possible exclusion. Yes, self-organizing civic activism leads to empowerment of many groups, also marginalized groups, immigrants, so on and so forth. It also may lead to exclusion. And I have examples from, specific examples from Toronto about that. They also, these guys, Rask, Pustin, and Raisio, are also call our attention to the possibility that many of these activists are very eager to put those possible risks or drawbacks of their activism under the carpet. So they become very self-righteous. And actually they use the word narcissistic, so that there is not much of self-reflection or self-criticism in it. It's all, and actually in this brief research that I did for this presentation in literature in Finland, I found a lot of hoopla and boosterism about the fourth sector activism. And finally, one issue that is interesting, and it's very interesting for me, is that although the activism, this kind of activism is not profit-making, the aim is not to make money. However, it is important that the people who are involved have some kind of financial well-being. So they're not exploited, they're not exhausted, and exhaust their own means. And that's something that we have to keep in mind when we talk about this kind of activism. That, okay, yes, profit is not part of the equation, but financial well-being should be. So these people shouldn't be starving and shouldn't be all, you know, alternative youth kind of people. So money, which is something that not many people want to talk about because it's a really vulgar issue, and especially talking about the social entrepreneurialism and all the benefits that it brings, to bring the discussion about money and but it's voluntary based. So what about money? Well, actually, there is a limit maybe to the voluntarism, and after that, especially when there is synergy between municipalities and or the public sector and the people. So especially then, there should be this clear and transparent discussion about what kind of resources we can get or we can give to these people. And it's an important discussion, although it might still be sound vulgar, because Finland is an expensive country. It's the index number is 126.7, and that's a household consumption expenditure. So things cost. There are high costs, and Greece is 86.6. Of course, you would say, but the salaries are 4 times high. Well, it's not true, actually. The Finnish salaries are not like maybe Denmark that I've heard, or Norway, or even Sweden. I mean, I've seen the minimum hourly paid of unskilled or low-skilled workers, and if you are under 18, it's between 8 and 10 maybe euros per hour, and if you are above 18, depending on your experience, it might be from 9 to 15 euros per hour. So it's not huge, huh? And of course, where does the money come for the third sector or the fourth sector? Well, for the third sector, because they're non-governmental organizations, but they are organizations, they are legal entities, more or less, maybe you can track what they get. But for the fourth sector, when we're talking about just people, that they lobby together, they make a group, how do they ask for money? Where do they go? Well, many of them have to turn into a legal entity. I mean, I have an experience personally in Finland, in Helsinki, turning into an association in order to, and especially when funders ask for cooperation between different partners, public, private, and people, then very often this kind of activist groups have to become a legal entity. And I give you an example of one only of the possible funding sources that's not only for activism, it funds a lot of things, I'll tell you. It's Veikkaus, it's a national betting company. So it's national betting company where they include all sorts of betting. It has a monopoly on betting services in Finland. They make 1 billion euros per year, and they distribute that to different sectors, social and health, society and health, on culture and arts, on sports, on science, on youth services, veterans, and so on and so forth. And we are talking about tens and hundreds of millions of euros. And as far as I remember, in something that I read from MindPie and finally again from 2017, in 2015, Finland had, there was a number of 85, I think, million euros of crowdfunding. So crowdfunding is also a substantial resource, but we are talking in general about tens and tens of billions. How are they distributed? And this is a matter of transparency, as I said, for a country that is very eager to promote its own transparency. Money, how vulgar and how unsavory I am. I'm very sorry. But you know, it came to my mind, and actually I have in my mind this one of the best papers I've ever read by late Anne Heila from Antinkatu to from Anankara to Antinkatu, and where she argues and she actually demonstrates that the city of Helsinki, the municipality, is basically a real estate developer because they are the biggest landowners, so they have planning monopoly, and what the contracts that they make with private contractors Anne Heila argued, was to reduce, among other things, to also reduce people's influence on how the urban development takes place. Now, this is not something radical maybe, or very surprising even maybe, but in a country where there is a lot of trust to public authorities, I mean, tax evasion must be negligent in Finland compared to other countries. So in this kind of trust and community and communication atmosphere we have, to have a city that acts as a corporation that acts for the benefit of people, so it's pro-social, but it also employs private sector operations. It's a bit tricky, to say the least. So what I'm seeing in Finland, in Helsinki, is I'm seeing kind of corporatization of public space happening or emerging. So before, people that they are passionate about public space would say that, we have to protect public space from private interests. And we were always thinking private enterprises like big companies and, the cafes that they take terrace space outside in the sidewalks and stuff. But now maybe we have to start thinking, okay, yeah, we have also this fourth sector, this public space activism that is actually great that is happening. But how do we deal with them? How do we conceptualize what they're doing, and how do we also fund them in a proper way and in a transparent way? I've been asking colleagues at the university, at Aalto University, like, so do you know who is actually funding all these activities from the fourth sector? And they were all at a loss, we don't know really. There are different sources, and yeah. Anyway, I think it should be funded. I'm adamant about it. I think people should be getting money for their work, and that financial well-being should be in the agenda, not as a byproduct, even if it sounds a bit vulgar or unsavory. I wanted to finish with this photo from Helsinki, which of course now the incidents or the cases for coronavirus are slowly rising and rising compared to the summer where we were really low. 40 per day or something. So this is from one of the most famous, maybe even the most famous blogger in Finland, Timo Hamalainen, and the blog is Urban Finland, who has this photo, did the virus kill Helsinki? Well, I don't think so. I'm happy that it hasn't. And I wish you all that you stay safe. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Michail. That was really interesting. You also connected very much with two of the previous speakers. Yesterday, we actually did have Pasi, who presented this notion of urban activism, and also was talking very much about or introduced us to this notion of the fourth sector. And I think your framing of that, and also your questioning the economics of that, was really interesting, about how is this to be funded or self-funded, and also with the city as the largest real estate company is also something I think, particularly in the Nordics, is an issue which is not talked about enough, actually. So thanks for that.